Hello, this is Mr. Mike for the Mechanicsburg Learning Center with Mr. Mike's Dino-A-Day feature brought to you every day, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Facebook, and we go live. And if you go to YouTube, you simply look up Mr. Mike Sgrignoli, and you will find all of my videos there. Today is episode number 70. 70 days in a row, we have talked about a unique, exotic, extinct animal. Today, no exception, we're talking about a very interesting one. And the reason I was looking at this when we went live this morning, this is a piece of actual dinosaur bone. And it's really quite amazing what you can tell from pieces of bone. Now, of course, we have like a little T-Rex mounted to it, but the little plaque on there says, Tyrannosaurus, genuine dinosaur bone. That's what it said. I got it at a yard sale, so who knows how authentic it is, but it certainly looks like a dinosaur bone. Things that you can tell from dinosaur bones, as I mentioned, are pretty amazing. What they're doing now is they are cutting the bones. Like let's just say, for example, that this was a dinosaur bone. And you can look at it, and you could observe it, and you can try to figure out what animal it belongs to. But now what they're doing is they're cutting straight through it, and they're looking at it like you would look at the rings of a tree, because now we are able to tell how old the dinosaur was when it died. A lot of important information comes out of that, and in doing so, they have begun to, the word would be contract, not expand the actual numbers of different genuses of dinosaurs. And the reason this is happening is that they are finding some of the animals that we have given separate names to are actually a different aged version of an animal that we already know about. And this is happening, not a lot, but it's happening a little bit more often than you might expect. So some of the actual dinosaur names are contracting, and we're not expanding the number of dinosaur names because this is occurring. But, you know, if you think about it, it takes a lot of guts to actually want to cut a dinosaur bone in half just to observe how old it is. But that is nonetheless what they are doing. So all these interesting things that we can learn from dinosaurs. For example, we can tell a lot about a dinosaur if it happened to get injured while it was alive. That is the case with today's animal. We know it sustained some injuries. Now, we know exactly what the injury was, and we also know that the injury healed before the animal died. Now, that doesn't mean it happened a couple of days before it died. It could have happened years before the animal died. But when you see a bone that has been broken and then it looks differently than a bone that never got broken. If let's say this is the dinosaur bone that you discover, and right in this area it seems to be a little puffed up, maybe some scar tissue built up around it, you'll note that the bone at one point in its life was broken and it mended back together, and it has scar tissue holding it together. So that is the case with the animal we are talking about today. The animal is called and pronounced, well, let me show you how it's spelled first and give you a look at it, and maybe you guys can guess how it's pronounced. Here you go. One of the, as I began to write all these poems for the segment that we do every day, I noticed that I've covered an awful lot of different letters of the alphabet. Some letters are largely overlooked. This happens to be one of them. So I wanted to do a dinosaur that started with the letter J for our special episode 70. So this is, how would you pronounce it? JEYAWATI? No. JEYAWATI. JEYAWATI. The J has an H sound, so say it with me. 1, 2, 3. JEYAWATI. JEYAWATI. And take a look at this beautiful animal. Some of the things that make it distinct are the fact it's obviously a duckbill, some related to the hadrosaur, not an official hadrosaur, but related to it. And I want you to pay attention to this. Okay, it did have some interesting growths above its eyes. Protection, perhaps, to protect its eyes. There is some speculation that maybe it pumped blood into them and they may have changed color. Maybe when it was mating season and wanted to attract the females and say, I am a virile male ready to mate and be a good father. So that's what JEYAWATI looked like, we believe. Also, you really can't see it from the picture, but I want you to at least notice its jawbone, because the jawbone is what the name, another name for jawbone would be mandible. Mandible. So the JEYAWATI is a Native American word. It comes from the Zuni tribe. Now you may be familiar with Zuni ceratops, same derivation. The Zuni tribe in western New Mexico actually is responsible and is being honored by the name. The name means grinding mouth. Now, most times when you chew or masticate, humans chew like this. Animals chew differently. Animals, sometimes their jaws go from side to side to chew up plant matter. We kind of chew like this. Animals sometimes chew like this. JEYAWATI chewed like this. His bottom jaw came forward and backward, which grinded the teeth. That makes it kind of unique. So they took it from A, where it was found, and then took the Zuni term for grinding mouth, and that's what JEYAWATI means. So fascinating way to come up with a name. And then that would be the genus name, right? JEYAWATI, genus name, and then it has a second name. Now, thus far, only one species has been discovered. So we don't have to worry about having all these different versions of JEYAWATI this, JEYAWATI that. It is JEYAWATI rugoculus. Rugoculus. Now, oculus, you may recall from a previous episode, refers to the eye. So it's talking about its eye. Ru means wrinkled. So its name means grinding mouth, wrinkled eye. Wrinkled eye because of these things. Okay? And that is not Zuni. That comes from either Greek or Latin. So let's tell you a little bit about this thing. Lived about 91 million years ago. Was discovered in New Mexico by a family. A noted discoverer named Douglas Wolfe, his wife Hazel, and his son Christopher. They must have happened upon the specimen one day out on a walk, and took place in 1996, and the whole family gets credit for discovering it. Then it took another 13 years for them to completely excavate it and to get it out of the what we call the matrix, the rock matrix, and that was with the assistance of James Kirkland, noted paleontologist, among many, many volunteers. 2010, it gets named by Andrew T. McDonald in association with Peter Dodson. Peter Dodson, a fairly famous paleontologist, had a student, a younger gentleman, Andrew McDonald, who took the lead on this and basically described the animal for his doctoral thesis. So pretty interesting, and it became a unique genus, and therefore a unique dinosaur that no one had ever seen before, and no one had ever given a name. And once again, the name starts with J, but does not sound like a J. JEYAWATI. Okay. So, discovered by a family, related to the hadrosaurs, but not an official hadrosaur. Its bones are on display. Excuse me, I don't know if they're actually on display, but they are being stored at the Arizona Museum of Natural History. That's in Mesa, Arizona. So I'm not sure if you can actually go out and see JEYAWATI, but you may be able to see some fossiled casts of it, which I'm sure, because they would be very proud to have their own unique specimen out there. So the word that I like to use now has to do with its teeth, and what a really cool word that I just learned fairly recently was dentary. Okay, the dentary is the bones that actually hold the teeth. It's part of the jawbone, so it's called dentary, and whenever I have a new word, I certainly like to use it in a poem to describe the animal. So as I said, 91 million years old. It was herbivorous. It was quadrupedal, but we do think that it probably could rear up and go bipedal if it was trying to run away from something. Was about 18 to 20 feet long and stood about 6 foot tall at the hips. So it may have been crouched over, walking on 2 legs with some shorter forearms, and its hips would have been about the height of Mr. Mike. So, decent-sized animal. JEYAWATI. Why don't we go ahead and jump into the JEYAWATI rugoculus poem written especially for you by Mr. Mike on this 70th episode of Mr. Mike's Dino-A-Day. Borrow these so I can see them perfectly. Make sure that what I just wrote I can read. JEYAWATI rugoculus. If you were born a dinosaur, you'd have to be real tough. Surviving all those predatory creatures could be rough. You'd have to have some smarts upstairs so that you could decide if you should stay and fight them off or run away and hide. Of course, throughout your life, there'd be some challenges you'd face. You may sustain an injury your bones could not erase. The ribs of JEYAWATI, spotted in New Mexico, reveal that they'd been broken 90 million years ago. They also tell us that the ribs were healed before it died. It's fascinating what the bones convey and what's implied. The name comes from the Zuni, its New Mexican descent. Salute Native Americans was its sincere intent. The genus, JEYAWATI, that means grinding mouth, you see. Genus, first name of the dinosaur. Got it. Because it had a fairly special jaw and dentary. Its mandible was built to move the teeth from front to back. A different way this dinosaur dispensed with every snack. Most animals, when chewing, move their jaw from side to side. This animal could not do that, not even if it tried. And now let's take a closer look at JEYAWATI's eyes. They're noted for what's over them, nothing to do with size. The species name is quite descriptive too, as you will note. Rugoculus means wrinkle eye, and that's a direct quote. Above the JEYAWATI eyes, we think some scales were there to give the beast distinctiveness, a dino kind of flair. So based upon recovered bones, the JEYAWATI had a rather rough and tumble life, which makes me kind of glad. It shows that even if you trip, you stumble, and you fall, like JEYAWATI, you survive and make it through it all. The JEYAWATI rugoculus, a poem written especially for you by Mr. Mike for the Mechanicsburg Learning Center's Mr. Mike's Dino-A-Day daily feature. We come to you live every day on Facebook, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we post every video on YouTube. Just simply go looking for Mr. Mike Sgrignoli. So, when you go to YouTube, make sure you like it, make sure you subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. For the JEYAWATI, this is Mr. Mike. Until tomorrow, when we do episode number 71. Thanks so much. We'll see you tomorrow.